I never told my son how much I truly earned. For more than 2 decades, I'd quietly built a successful career, collecting paychecks most people could only dream of. Yet to Marcus, I was just mom. The woman who left early, came home tired, and cooked whatever was left in the fridge. A simple, ordinary woman. That's how he saw me, and I never corrected him. I wasn't poor. Far from it. For nearly 20 years, I had been the operations head at a global firm, signing deals worth millions, handling teams across countries. My salary? Let's just say I made more in a month than most made in a year. But I never felt the need to flaunt it. My generation didn't wear dignity like jewelry. We carried it quietly. I lived in the same modest apartment for years. My furniture was old but comfortable. My handbag's leather cracked from years of use, and my clothes came from discount racks. My life didn't sparkle, but it was stable, solid. I invested wisely, saved constantly, and grew quietly wealthy, because real strength doesn't show off. It observes. It waits. That's exactly what I was doing when Marcus called me one Tuesday afternoon. His voice was different, nervous, uncertain, the same tone he had as a boy when he'd broken something valuable. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor," he began. "Simone's parents are visiting from abroad. They want to meet you. We're having dinner this weekend at a nice restaurant. Please come." His tone wasn't one of excitement, it was hesitation, like he was afraid I might embarrass him. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked. There was silence. Then softly, "I told them you work in an office. That you live alone, that you live simply." That word, simply. It cut deeper than he realized. To him, it was harmless. To me, it sounded like an apology in disguise, like he needed to justify me. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "All right, Marcus," I said. "I'll be there." When the call ended, I looked around my small living room, the faded curtains, the clean but aged sofa, the TV that still worked fine despite being a decade old. My space was humble, yes, but it was mine. Still, something in me stirred. If my son thought I was poor, then perhaps I should give him, and his in-laws, exactly what they expected to see. That night, I made a plan. I would attend that dinner as the woman they imagined me to be, a naive, struggling, middle-aged mother. I wanted to see how they would treat someone who, in their eyes, had nothing to offer. I had a feeling Simone's family measured worth by appearance, not character. And I was going to test that theory. Saturday came. I dressed in the plainest clothes I owned, a faded gray dress, old shoes, and not a single piece of jewelry. My hair went up in a messy bun, and I carried a worn canvas bag. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked fragile, invisible, perfect. The taxi ride to the restaurant felt longer than usual. As the city lights passed by, I felt a mix of sadness and curiosity. Sadness that my own son didn't know who I really was. Curiosity about how far people's pride could go when they thought they were better than someone else. The restaurant was stunning. Chandeliers, velvet chairs, and an entrance guarded by a doorman in white gloves. The kind of place where menus don't bother listing prices. I stepped inside. And there they were, Marcus and Simone, waiting near a table by the window. He looked sharp in a dark suit. She, elegant as ever, in a cream-colored dress and gold earrings. But her smile faded slightly when she saw me. Behind them sat her parents, impeccably dressed, wealthy, written all over their faces. As I approached, Marcus's expression froze. His eyes darted nervously to Simone, then to me. "Mom, you came." "Of course, son," I said softly, pretending not to notice his discomfort. Simone's greeting was polite but cold. "Nice to see you, Mrs. Hale," she said as if rehearsed. Then she turned to her parents. "Mom, Dad, this is Marcus's mother." The older woman, Veronica, gave me a long look, her eyes scanning my wrinkled dress, my old shoes, my cheap bag. Her husband barely smiled. Their handshake was weak, dismissive. I sat quietly at the end of the table, far from them all. The air around us was thick with judgment. They didn't know it yet. But that night, I wasn't the one being tested. They were. Veronica, my daughter-in-law's mother, was the first to speak. Her voice was sharp but coated with sugar, the kind of tone people use when they want to sound kind while cutting you down at the same time. "So, Mrs. Hale," she said, smiling without warmth, "Marcus told us you work in an office. What exactly do you do there?" I gave her the gentlest smile I could manage. A bit of everything, I said softly. Mostly paperwork, organizing files, that kind of thing. Veronica tilted her head, pretending to be impressed. How lovely. It's good to stay busy, even at your age. Routine keeps the mind sharp. Her husband Gregory chuckled, as if she'd said something funny. Simone looked down at her napkin, twisting it between her fingers. Marcus looked like he wanted to vanish. The waiter handed out the heavy menus, full of words written in French. I pretended to squint at the page, letting them believe I couldn't understand a single word. Do you need help? Veronica asked, her eyes gleaming. Yes, please, I replied meekly. She waved a hand toward the waiter. Get her something simple, she said, her voice just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Maybe soup and bread? Nothing extravagant. Her husband nodded approvingly. We don't want to overdo it. The words hung in the air like a quiet insult. I smiled politely as if I hadn't noticed. Dinner continued, or rather their performance did. Veronica spoke endlessly about their recent trip to Italy, the hotel that charged only $1,000 a night, and the private vineyard tour that was worth every penny. I listened with an expression of mild admiration, nodding at the right moments. It wasn't envy I felt, it was confirmation. Confirmation that I had been right about them. They were exactly what I thought, people who confused wealth with worth. You must find it difficult living alone, Veronica said suddenly, cutting through her own story. It can't be easy at your age with limited income, I chuckled quietly. I manage, I said. I save where I can. How brave, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Not everyone can survive like that. But you must wish you could give Marcus more, yes? I mean, every mother does. That one stung. Not because of her words, but because of how effortlessly cruel they were. I felt Marcus shift beside me, tense. But I stayed calm, smiling softly. We all give what we can, I replied. Some give time, others give money. Veronica raised an eyebrow. True, she said lightly. When Simone got married, we made sure she had the best start. Paid for the honeymoon, helped with the down payment, all those little things parents do when they can afford to. Her husband nodded proudly. We believe in supporting our children, I simply replied. That's very generous of you. Inside, though, I could feel something rising, a quiet, icy anger. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that sharpens. The kind that prepares. They went on for another 20 minutes about their businesses, properties in 3 countries, and their refined tastes. I smiled, nodded, and said almost nothing. The more they spoke, the more they revealed their emptiness. When the main courses arrived, each dish like artwork, tiny portions for absurd prices, Veronica picked at her steak and said proudly, This one's $85, but quality is worth paying for. I suppose you don't eat out much, Mrs. Hale? Not often, I said, lowering my gaze. I prefer to cook at home. How quaint, she said. I always say people with simpler lives find happiness in small things. I looked up then, catching her eyes for a brief moment. You're right, I said calmly. But sometimes the simplest things hold more truth than all the luxuries in the world. She smiled tightly, not quite understanding the depth of what I'd just said. As dessert came, the atmosphere grew thicker. Veronica leaned forward slightly, resting her jeweled hand on the table. You know, since we're all family now, I'd like to discuss something important. Marcus stiffened. Mom, maybe now isn't... Veronica lifted her palm to silence him. Please, Marcus. This concerns all of us. She turned her gaze to me, her tone deceptively sweet. You've raised Marcus wonderfully, Mrs. Hale, truly. But now that he's married, we believe it's important to think about the future. About stability. Stability? I asked quietly. Yes, she said, still smiling. Emotional and financial stability. We just don't want Marcus to carry unnecessary responsibilities. You understand? Her husband added smoothly. We were actually thinking, maybe we could help you a little each month, a small allowance. Nothing big, of course, just enough so Marcus doesn't have to worry so much. The way he said it, so Marcus doesn't have to worry, was the final confirmation. They weren't offering help. They were offering a bribe to erase me from my own son's life. I looked at them both, still smiling faintly. That's very thoughtful, I said. But tell me, how much do you think a mother's silence is worth? Their smiles faltered. I sat there, pretending to think about their offer. In reality, I was studying their faces, Veronica's smug smile, Gregory's proud posture, and Simone's eyes, which darted nervously between all of us. Marcus, poor thing, looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Veronica leaned closer. We'd of course call it a small gesture, she said. Maybe $700 a month, just to make things easier. You wouldn't have to feel burdened. That word again. It wasn't just money they were offering. It was silence, obedience, and distance. They wanted to pay me to disappear. I placed my napkin on my lap, took a slow sip of water, and smiled. That's a kind thought, Veronica. But I'm curious, how much was the gesture you gave for Marcus and Simone's wedding? Her chin lifted proudly. We gifted them $40,000 for their home and paid for their honeymoon. Another $15,000. It was worth every cent. $55,000, I said softly, as if doing mental math. That's quite an investment. Veronica nodded, missing the sarcasm completely. We believe in giving our children a head start. We don't hold back when it comes to family. I leaned forward, my voice calm and low. And what did you receive in return for that generosity, Veronica? Respect, love? Gratitude? Or just control? Her smile faltered. Excuse me? I didn't raise my tone. I didn't need to. You've been talking all night about what you've spent, where you've been, what you own. But not once have you asked how I live, what I enjoy, or if I'm happy. You've been calculating my value in dollars. According to you, I'm worth about $700 a month, correct? Her cheeks reddened. You're misinterpreting our intentions, she said stiffly. No, I said. I've understood them perfectly. Gregory adjusted his tie. You're taking this personally, Mrs. Hale. We're simply trying to help. Help? I repeated, still smiling. Help is given with kindness, not condescension. Help doesn't come with conditions. Marcus reached out. Mom, please, I stopped him with a gentle look. It's all right, son. I'm fine. Then I turned back to them. Do you know what's interesting? I asked. You've assumed from the moment I walked in that I'm struggling. You've mistaken simplicity for weakness. Veronica's lips tightened. If you felt insulted... Oh, I don't feel insulted, I said, my tone sharp as glass. I feel enlightened. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult she'd thrown at me. Even Simone's fork froze midair. For years, I continued, I worked hard, raised my son alone, paid for his education, his clothes, his meals, and his dreams. I did all of that quietly, with no one offering me a dime. And tonight, you offered me $700 to stop being his mother. Veronica's face went pale. That's not what we meant, I smiled faintly. No? Then please explain what you did mean. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Gregory looked toward the waiter as if begging for a distraction. I folded my napkin neatly. Let me tell you something, Veronica. You said earlier you admire women who struggle alone. But have you ever been one? Have you ever worked a 12-hour day and then come home to feed a child, with bills piling up and no one to call for help? Have you ever built something from nothing? I've managed businesses, she said defensively. I've handled investments. With your husband's money, I finished calmly. There's a difference between managing and creating, between inheritance and effort. I built my life from zero with no one but myself to rely on. The table was dead silent. Simone looked like she might cry. Marcus just stared at me, not with embarrassment, but something else. Oh, maybe, Veronica exhaled, trying to regain control. Well, she said, her tone icy, perhaps you're proud of your simplicity, and that's fine. But money does make life easier. You're right, I said. It does. But it also reveals who people truly are when they think they have more than others. Veronica's jaw clenched. Gregory muttered something under his breath, but I ignored it. Then softly I said, since we're being honest, maybe I should tell you something about myself too. Marcus frowned. Mom? I turned to him and smiled. You've always seen me as an ordinary woman, haven't you? Just someone who worked in an office and lived a small life. He nodded slowly, confused. I looked back at Veronica and Gregory. You asked what I do for a living. I never answered properly. Let me fix that. I sat up straight, my voice steady, every word landing like a drop of truth on polished marble. I'm not a clerk. I'm not an assistant. I'm the senior operations director of an international firm. I manage contracts worth millions. I oversee teams across 5 countries. And I earn more in 1 month than your family spent on your entire European vacation. The table froze. No one spoke. And in that silence, I saw every ounce of arrogance drain from Veronica's face. For a moment, no one spoke. The air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus stared at me, his lips slightly parted. Simone's fork clattered against her plate. Veronica sat frozen, the confident sparkle in her eyes extinguished. You? She finally managed to whisper. You earn that much? Yes, I replied calmly. For almost 20 years now. Gregory's hand tightened around his wine glass. That's impossible, he muttered. You live like someone who doesn't need to prove anything, I interrupted gently. That's the difference between me and most people you know. I don't spend money to create an illusion. Marcus blinked rapidly, still processing. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? Because it didn't matter, I said softly. I wanted you to grow up valuing effort, not comfort. To earn your place, not inherit it. I wanted you to learn what I had to learn. That dignity means more than display. Veronica's lips trembled. But why live so simply? She asked, as though simplicity was an illness. I leaned back in my chair. Because I can. Because peace is worth more than pearls, and silence is richer than applause. I didn't build my life to impress anyone. I built it to survive. Simone looked down, shame flickering across her face. I never knew, she murmured. I know, dear, I replied softly. None of you did. That's what made this evening so revealing. Veronica swallowed hard, trying to regain composure. If what you're saying is true, then you've deceived everyone. Your son, your daughter-in-law, and us. No, I said firmly. I didn't deceive anyone. I simply never flaunted the truth. There's a difference between privacy and pretense. Gregory's tone hardened. Regardless, this entire dinner feels manipulative. I smiled faintly. Perhaps. But manipulation wasn't my goal. Awareness was. I wanted to see how you'd treat someone you believed had nothing. And now that I've seen, I'll never forget it. Veronica's face flushed red. You're cruel, she spat. You humiliated us. No, I replied. You humiliated yourselves. I only gave you the stage. The waiter appeared quietly, sensing the tension but too polite to acknowledge it. Would anyone like dessert? He asked timidly. Yes, I said without hesitation. Bring your finest. And a glass of your best red wine. The waiter nodded and left swiftly. Veronica stared at me, disbelief written all over her face. After all this, you still have the nerve to order dessert? I smiled. Of course. I don't let discomfort ruin good food. When the waiter returned, he placed before me a delicate chocolate mousse topped with gold flakes. The same one Veronica had ordered earlier, boasting of its price. I picked up my spoon and tasted it slowly. Delicious, I murmured. Worth every dollar. Veronica's eyes narrowed. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I looked straight at her. No, I'm remembering it. Because tonight I didn't just reclaim my respect, I also reminded you what real worth looks like. Gregory pushed his chair back slightly, agitated. You think you're better than us? Not better, I said. Just different. You see money as power. I see it as freedom. You use it to control. I use it to choose peace. Simone wiped a tear. Marcus covered his face, torn between anger, pride, and disbelief. I reached for my bag and pulled out a sleek black card, the corporate kind only issued to top executives. I placed it gently on the table, right in front of Veronica. That, I said, pays for the entire dinner and the waiter's tip. Consider it a gift from the poor mother you pitied. Her eyes widened. She picked it up, turning it over in her trembling hand. My name, Clara Hale, Regional Director, gleamed in silver lettering. Take it, I said. You once offered me $700 to disappear. Tonight, let me offer you a free meal to remember me by. Gregory leaned forward, furious. That's enough, is it? I asked quietly, because it seems to me the only thing enough tonight was your arrogance. Veronica placed the card back on the table as though it burned her fingers. I don't need your charity. I know, I said gently, but you didn't need to offer me yours either. For the first time that night, Veronica had no response. She sat rigid, her carefully painted face beginning to crack, not from makeup, but from pride collapsing under truth. I took one last bite of my dessert, stood up slowly, and adjusted my faded gray dress. Thank you for dinner, I said. It's been enlightening. Then I looked at Marcus. Come, son. Let's go home. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped out of the restaurant. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. The city lights shimmered across the glass buildings, and the soft hum of traffic replaced the suffocating silence of that dinner table. Marcus followed me quickly, calling out, "Mom, wait." I turned, still calm. "Yes, son?" He looked shaken, torn between love and guilt. "Why didn't you tell me before? About your job, your life, all of it?" I smiled faintly. "Because you needed to learn who you were without my shadow. I didn't want you to grow up thinking money was a shortcut. I wanted you to know effort, failure, and responsibility." He lowered his gaze. "I made you feel like you weren't enough." I touched his arm. "No, you just didn't know better. But tonight, you saw the truth. Not about me, but about them." He nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. "I can't believe they treated you that way." "Oh, believe it," I said softly. "People show their truest selves when they think you can't offer them anything." Before I could say more, a voice echoed from behind us. "Mrs. Hale!" It was Veronica. She had followed us outside, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. The mask of calm she'd worn during dinner was gone, replaced by anger, humiliation, and disbelief. "You humiliated us in there," she snapped. "You made us look like fools." I turned toward her slowly. "No, Veronica. I didn't make you look like anything. You simply revealed what you already were." She stepped closer, trembling with fury. "You think your money gives you the right to lecture us?" "I think truth gives me that right," I replied evenly. "And you spent the entire evening pretending kindness while insulting me." All I did was hold up a mirror. Gregory appeared behind her, his expression hard and colorless. "You've crossed the line, Mrs. Hale. You don't know who you're dealing with." I smiled, not out of arrogance, but certainty. "Actually, I do. I've met hundreds like you in boardrooms, powerful on paper, weak in principle." He flinched, his jaw tightening. "You'll regret this." "I already regret something," I said. "Regret not standing up to people like you sooner." Veronica's voice trembled between pride and panic. "You've destroyed any chance of us having a normal relationship as family." "There was never anything normal about pretending," I said quietly. "But don't worry, I don't hold grudges. I just remember lessons," Gregory scoffed. "Lessons? You're preaching like a saint." "Not a saint," I replied, "just someone who's been underestimated long enough." For a moment, no one spoke. The streetlight flickered above us, and I could see their reflections in the restaurant window. Two people who had spent their lives wrapped in status, now stripped bare by truth. Marcus stepped forward. "That's enough. Mom's done nothing wrong. If anything, I should have seen this coming." Veronica looked at him, hurt flashing in her eyes. "Marcus, we helped you, gave you everything. And expected control in return," he cut in. "You don't help people if you keep score, mother-in-law or not." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Gregory put a hand on her shoulder, his face cold. "Let's go," he muttered. But just as they turned to leave, a waiter rushed out, calling after them. "Excuse me, sir. Your credit card was declined." Gregory froze. "That's ridiculous." "Try again." "I did, twice," the waiter replied apologetically. "It was declined both times." The silence that followed was brutal. Veronica's eyes darted to me. I didn't say a word, just watched as Gregory fumbled for another card, his confidence unraveling. Marcus whispered, "Mom." I shook my head gently. "No, don't say anything." After another attempt, the waiter returned again. "I'm sorry, sir. This one didn't go through either." Gregory's face turned crimson. "It must be a system error." Veronica's voice cracked. "It's never happened before. Never." I reached calmly into my bag, pulled out a slim metallic card, and handed it to the waiter. "Use this," I said. "Please add a generous tip." He took it with a respectful nod. "Right away, ma'am." Veronica stared at the card in my hand as though it were glowing. Yes, I said softly. "It's real. And it works." She took a trembling step backward. For once, she had no insult ready, no defense, no pretense. Her world, built on the illusion of wealth and superiority, was cracking. I turned to Marcus. "Let's go home, son," he nodded, still stunned. We started walking down the street together while behind us. The waiter returned with the receipt. Gregory didn't look at me when he signed it with my pen. That silence, their silence, was the sweetest sound I'd heard all night. The next morning, sunlight poured softly into my kitchen. The kettle hissed, and the familiar scent of tea filled the air, warm, grounding, peaceful. For the first time in days, I felt completely still. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind. Veronica's trembling hands, Gregory's quiet rage, Marcus's eyes brimming with guilt. I hadn't meant to humiliate them, but truth has a way of shining too brightly when people have lived too long in shadows. I sat at the table, opened my laptop and checked the morning emails. Routine, ordinary, just as I liked it. But then my phone rang, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. "Mrs. Hale?" The voice said hesitantly. It was Simone. For a moment, I considered not answering. But then I sighed softly and said, "Yes, dear." "I'm here," her voice trembled. "I wanted to apologize. For everything that happened? For how we treated you." There was sincerity in her tone, the kind that doesn't come from guilt, but from realization. "You don't need to apologize," I said gently. "Sometimes people must stumble before they learn to walk differently." She paused, sniffled, then whispered, "Mom told me she didn't sleep all night." She's ashamed," I didn't reply right away. Shame is a strange thing, heavy but cleansing if handled right. "I see," I said finally. "That's a start." Then quietly, Simone added, "She wants to talk to you." I felt a small pang of surprise. "She does?" "Yes, she asked if she could come by, alone." I looked toward the window where sunlight danced across the tablecloth. After a moment, I nodded to myself. "Tell her I'll make tea." 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Veronica stood there, without her jewels, without makeup, and without the mask of superiority. She looked human. "Fragile even. May I come in?" she asked softly. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. She entered slowly, eyes scanning the simple apartment she'd once judged. It was spotless, quiet, filled with plants and sunlight, a space that carried peace instead of pretense. "I didn't expect your home to feel so," she began, searching for the word. "Real," I finished for her. She smiled weakly. "Yes, real." I poured her tea and handed her a cup. She took it carefully, as though it might shatter in her hands. For a while, we just sat in silence. The ticking clock was the only sound between us. Then she spoke. "You were right," she said. "About everything. I looked down on you because I thought success was supposed to shine. But you carry it quietly." I looked at her, seeing not the arrogant woman from last night, but someone stripped of armor. "We all wear masks, Veronica. Yours was pride. Mine was patience." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to protect my daughter, but I went too far." "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said softly. "You were protecting an image, not her." She nodded slowly. "You showed me what real class looks like. And it isn't in the clothes or the cars or the money. It's in how a person treats others when no one's watching." A small, genuine smile touched my lips. "That's all I wanted you to see." Veronica set her cup down and reached into her bag. "There's something else," she said, pulling out a small envelope. "I wanted to return what you paid last night." "It's the least I can do?" I shook my head. "Keep it. Let it remind you of a lesson that cost far more than a dinner." Her eyes softened. "You really are something, Clara." "I'm just someone who learned that silence can be more powerful than noise," I replied. Veronica rose to leave, but before she reached the door, she turned back. Would you consider coming over next weekend? Simone and Marcus are hosting a small lunch. No pretense, no show. Just family." For a moment, I hesitated. Then I smiled. "I'll think about it." She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, and left quietly. That night, I sat by the window watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. Marcus called to check on me, his voice lighter, more at peace. As we spoke, I realized something. I hadn't just taught Veronica a lesson. I had reminded myself of one too. Sometimes silence is strength. Sometimes truth is the only revenge you need. And sometimes forgiveness is the loudest answer of all. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "It's over now." But deep down, I knew it wasn't truly the end. Life has a way of circling back, of testing the peace we think we've earned. And when that happens, I'll be ready again.